The grand halls of the Galactic Council shimmered with golden light, reflecting off the intricate designs carved into the towering walls. Representatives from hundreds of advanced species sat in their designated seats, their voices a blend of languages, murmurs, and occasional laughter. At the center of the hall, a massive holographic display flickered to life, revealing the latest topic of discussion: humanity. The name itself was met with amusement, as many of the council members saw humans as nothing more than an insignificant race, barely worthy of mention in galactic affairs. Reports indicated that this young species had recently developed its first fleet of warships, a fact that should have drawn concern. But instead, it invited mockery. The council chamber erupted into laughter, the sound echoing through the vast hall as representatives exchanged knowing glances. The HFY ambassador, a towering reptilian with scales that shimmered like polished steel, leaned back in his seat, a cruel grin spreading across his face. Terran warships? Is this a joke? He scoffed, his voice carrying the arrogance of a species that had ruled the stars for centuries. Do they plan to fight with scrap metal? Perhaps they think their primitive technology will scare us? The laughter grew louder, joined by representatives from the Vorner Dominion, the Cravathi clans, and the Zorvex Confederation. Each of these empires had spent millennia perfecting the art of war, their fleets spanning entire star systems. The very idea that a newly spacefaring species like humanity would challenge their dominance was beyond absurd. Even the more neutral races, those who had yet to expand their military might, could not contain their amusement. To them, humans were nothing more than a curiosity, a fragile species that had only recently crawled out of their own atmosphere. The Zorvex delegate, a being with multiple glowing eyes and an ever-shifting form, waved a dismissive appendage. "Let us not waste our time on this matter," they said, their voice an eerie whisper that resonated through the air. "Humanity will soon learn its place in the galaxy. Their warships, if they can even be called that, are nothing compared to our fleets. They will break upon the first sign of true battle." The council chamber erupted into another wave of laughter, as if the fate of an entire species had already been sealed without a single battle being fought. The holographic display shifted, showing grainy images of Earth's fleet, sleek, dark-hulled ships with unfamiliar weapon systems. To the council members, they looked small, unimpressive, barely more than civilian vessels fitted with makeshift armaments. The Cravathi warlord, a brute of a creature covered in spiked armor, sneered. "Let them come," he growled. "When they do, we will crush them so completely that their species will never rise again." Yet, amid the laughter and arrogance, there were a few who did not join in the mockery. The Yuvani ambassador, a pale-skinned humanoid with deep violet eyes, remained silent, her expression unreadable. Unlike the others, she had taken the time to study humanity, to watch their history unfold in the records gathered by the Council's intelligence divisions. Humans were not like other species. They did not rise through slow, careful expansion. They evolved through war, through conflict, through an unyielding drive to survive. In mere centuries, they had gone from riding horses to crafting weapons that could shatter planets. While the council laughed, she could not help but wonder what if they were wrong. What if humanity was not a joke, but something far more dangerous? But the warnings of a single ambassador meant nothing against the arrogance of the ruling powers. The meeting concluded with a unanimous decision: humanity was not a threat, nor were their warships worthy of recognition. No precautions would be taken, no defenses strengthened. The Council, in its infinite wisdom, saw no reason to prepare. After all, why fear a species that had just stepped into the stars? They had no idea that, beyond their laughter, the humans were already watching, already listening. And most importantly, they were preparing. The cold silence of space stretched endlessly as the fleet of Terran warships emerged from the darkness, their black hulls reflecting the distant light of a burning star. They moved with quiet precision, engines humming as they approached the designated meeting point, a neutral zone, chosen by the Galactic Council for what they called a demonstration. In reality, it was nothing more than an opportunity for the other species to mock humanity once again, to witness the supposed failure of Earth's military technology. The Council had sent observers, representatives from the most powerful empires, all expecting to see something laughable, something weak. Their warships, massive and ancient, floated nearby, their sleek metallic designs a stark contrast to the compact, heavily armored vessels of the Terran fleet. Even now, the alien delegates whispered among themselves, sneering at the humans who dared to believe they could stand among the galactic powers. On the bridge of the TSV Warhammer, Admiral Leon Carter stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the holographic projections displaying the fleet formation. The weight of history sat heavily on his shoulders. This was not just a demonstration, it was humanity's first true test in the galaxy. He knew the aliens expected failure, that they believed human warships were nothing but crude, outdated machines. They had no idea what was about to happen. A calm voice crackled through the comms, the fleet captain's report coming in steady. "Admiral, all ships are in position. Awaiting your orders." Carter exhaled slowly. "Begin the exercise," he commanded, his voice unwavering. The moment the order was given, the Terran fleet moved with a speed and efficiency that caught the alien observers off guard. The ships, though smaller in size, maneuvered in perfect formation, their adaptive thrusters adjusting instantaneously to new flight paths. Unlike the sluggish, bulky vessels of the galactic empires, human warships operated on a different philosophy: agility over size, precision over brute force. Then came the weapons test. A series of rapid-fire kinetic projectiles launched from the ships, striking designated targets with pinpoint accuracy. Unlike traditional energy-based weaponry, which many alien species relied on, these projectiles ignored shields entirely, piercing through reinforced plating with terrifying ease. The first few impacts were enough to silence the murmurs of amusement from the alien observers. What had once been laughter turned into uneasy silence as they watched the sheer destructive capability of Terran weaponry. One of the Exilvani commanders, a veteran of countless space battles, narrowed his reptilian eyes, his jaw tightening as he observed the attack patterns. This is not what we expected," he muttered under his breath. Unlike the predictable and ceremonial battle tactics of the Council's fleets, the humans fought with ruthless efficiency, optimizing every movement, wasting nothing. Their weapons were not designed for intimidation or showmanship, they were designed to kill. Another volley was fired, this time simulating an assault on a moving target. The results were even more devastating. The kinetic rounds adjusted their trajectory mid-flight, guided by advanced targeting systems that seemed almost instinctual. Alien shields, designed to absorb energy blasts, were useless against the sheer raw force of these weapons. The targets shattered into debris, fragments spiraling into the void like dying stars. A low growl echoed through the Council's observation deck as a Vorner admiral slammed his armored fist against the table. "Impossible!" he barked, his mandibles twitching in frustration. "How can such a young species develop such destructive power?" The Zorvek's representative, his glowing eyes flickering in nervous patterns, remained silent, his mind racing with calculations. If human ships could do this in a simple demonstration, what could they achieve in an actual war? The realization sent a ripple of unease through the Council. They had made a mistake. A terrible mistake. They had dismissed humanity too soon, mocked them without understanding the true nature of their warfare. Humans had never fought wars for sport, nor had they built fleets for mere display. They had fought for survival, for dominance, for the right to exist in an unforgiving universe. Every war in their history had shaped them, refined their tactics, and forced them to adapt in ways the Council could not comprehend. Admiral Carter watched the alien observers closely, reading their reactions with a quiet satisfaction. They had expected a spectacle, but what they had witnessed was a warning. He leaned forward, activating the fleet-wide comms once more. "Prepare for the final phase," he said. The ships shifted into attack formations, simulating a full-scale battle scenario. Instead of individual strikes, the fleet moved as a single entity, coordinating their firepower with terrifying efficiency. Advanced electronic warfare systems scrambled enemy sensors, jamming communications and disorienting the opposition. The alien observers, many of whom had fought in wars spanning centuries, recognized the signs of a perfect ambush. This was not a display of strength. It was a message. A cold, calculated statement that humanity was not just another species in the void, they were something else entirely. By the time the demonstration ended, the mood in the council chamber had changed. The laughter was gone. The arrogance, the condescension, all of it had vanished, replaced by something else. Fear. The HFY commander, once so eager to mock humanity, now stared at the holographic display with narrowed eyes. He could no longer deny what was in front of him. The Terran fleet was dangerous. Not because of their numbers, not because of their size, but because they fought like predators, silent, strategic, and utterly merciless. The Council had dismissed humanity as a joke, but now they faced an undeniable truth. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's warships. But now, for the first time, the laughter had stopped. The halls of the Galactic Council were unusually quiet, the usual hum of conversation replaced by a tense silence. The demonstration of the Terran fleet had shaken the confidence of many, but not all were willing to accept what they had witnessed. Some still clung to their arrogance, dismissing humanity's display as luck, a trick of clever engineering rather than true military power. Among them, the most vocal was Admiral Exel Tor of the HFY Dominion. His scaled fingers tapped impatiently on the polished table as he sneered at the uneasy faces around him. "Are we seriously entertaining the idea that these humans are a threat?" He scoffed, his golden eyes narrowing. "Their technology is crude, their fleet is small, and their species is young. They may have surprised us once, but that does not mean they deserve to stand among the great powers of this galaxy." His words found support among several other empires, their leaders nodding in agreement. They were ancient civilizations, their fleets having ruled the stars for millennia. How could a race that had only recently left its homeworld possibly challenge them? The very thought was insulting. But not all were so quick to dismiss the humans. The Yuvani ambassador, a slender being with violet-hued skin, folded her hands thoughtfully. "They have shown us that they do not fight like us," she said calmly, her voice carrying a quiet warning. "Their weapons are unconventional, their tactics unpredictable. We should not let our pride blind us." But her words were drowned in the laughter of the council, a wave of amusement spreading across the chamber as Exel Tor stood, his armored form towering over the others. "Then let us put this matter to rest," he declared, a confident smirk playing across his face. "The HFY Dominion will challenge the Terran fleet in a mock battle. One of our task forces against their best warships. A simple test to prove that these humans are nothing more than a fleeting anomaly." His challenge was met with approving murmurs, the doubt in the chamber fading as many found comfort in the thought of seeing humanity put back in its place. The council agreed, and the message was sent to Earth. When the challenge reached the Terran High Command, there was no hesitation in their response. They accepted. The chosen battlefield was a neutral system, an empty void with no planets, no obstacles, just open space where the two fleets could engage without interference. The HFY fleet arrived first, their warships gleaming under the distant starlight. They moved with practiced ease, their formations precise, their commanders relaxed. They had fought in countless wars and emerged victorious every time. To them, this was nothing more than a formality, a lesson to remind the upstart humans of their place. But when the Terran fleet arrived, something changed. Unlike the grand, imposing ships of the HFY, the human warships were sleek, compact, and painted in dark matte colors that made them look like shadows against the void. Their arrival was silent, their movements sharp and deliberate. The HFY commanders chuckled among themselves. "They don't even know how to make an intimidating entrance," one of them muttered. The rules were simple: disable the opposing fleet's flagships and force a retreat. It was meant to be a test of strategy and firepower, but as the battle began, it quickly became something else entirely. The HFY launched the first attack, their energy cannons lighting up the darkness with brilliant streaks of violet and blue. Their weapons, designed to overwhelm and intimidate, rained down upon the Terran fleet like a storm of fire. But the humans did not respond the way the HFY had expected. Instead of engaging in a direct exchange, the Terran warships scattered, their engines burning bright as they moved with terrifying speed. The Exilvani struggled to adjust, their weapons missing as the human fleet danced around them, striking from angles they had never anticipated. The first Exilvani warship to fall was the Vorkesh, its shields shredded in an instant as a concentrated barrage of kinetic rounds tore through its hull. The explosion sent a shockwave through the battlefield, but there was no time to process what had happened because the humans did not stop. Unlike the slow, methodical battles the Exilvani were used to, this was something entirely different. The Terran fleet fought with precision, their movements like a coordinated predator stalking its prey. Every strike was calculated, every shot landing with devastating accuracy. Their electronic warfare systems jammed Exilvani communications, their missiles weaving through enemy defenses like they had a mind of their own. Within minutes, another Exilvani warship was crippled, its engines disabled, leaving it adrift in the void. Panic began to spread through the Exilvani ranks. Their formations, once so perfect, were falling apart. Their commanders shouted orders, but it was too late. The humans had already seized control of the battle. Admiral Exceltor watched in horror as one of his last remaining capital ships took a direct hit, its hull splitting apart in a silent explosion. His confidence shattered. His mind struggled to process the impossible. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. They were the dominant force, the experienced warriors. And yet, the humans were tearing them apart like they'd been fighting in space for centuries. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He had underestimated them. They all had. And now they were paying the price. He had no choice. "Order a retreat," he growled, his voice barely above a whisper. His officers hesitated, unwilling to accept defeat, but there was no alternative. If they stayed, they would be destroyed. The command was given, and what remained of the once mighty Exilvani fleet turned and fled, their engines burning as they escaped the battlefield. As the last Exilvani warship vanished into the void, the Terran fleet regrouped, unscathed, victorious. On the bridge of the TSV Warhammer, Admiral Carter watched the retreating ships with an unreadable expression. His officers cheered, but he remained silent, his gaze fixed on the empty space where the enemy had once been. He knew what this meant. The Galactic Council had ignored the challenge, had dismissed them as nothing more than an amusing distraction. But now, that illusion had been shattered. Humanity had not only fought back, they had won. And somewhere, across the vast reaches of space, the leaders of the galaxy were realizing the same terrifying truth. The humans were not weak. They were not primitive. And they were not afraid. The silence of space was shattered in an instant. A single, calculated strike, silent, precise, and devastating, changed the course of history. The human warship TSV Warhammer led the charge, its dark hull barely visible against the void, moving like a phantom through the darkness. The Galactic Council had ignored the warnings, dismissed the humans as nothing more than a temporary nuisance, but now they would learn a harsh truth. Humanity did not play by the rules of the old empires. They did not fight with ceremony or outdated honor. When they struck to win. The target was an Exilvani military outpost stationed on the edge of Council-controlled space, a fortress thought to be impenetrable. The Exilvani believed their defenses were unmatched, their shields impenetrable, their fleets untouchable. But belief meant nothing against reality. The moment the first Terran missiles left their launch tubes, the battle was already over. Unlike the sluggish energy-based weapons of the Council's forces, these were hyper-accelerated kinetic projectiles, traveling at unimaginable speeds. They sliced through shields like paper, striking deep into the station's core before anyone had time to react. The Exilvani command barely had a moment to register what was happening before the explosions began. Fire consumed the once proud fortress, sending shockwaves rippling through space. The response was immediate but too slow. Exilvani warships scrambled to intercept, their massive cruisers turning to face the attackers, but the humans were already in motion. They moved like wolves among prey, their ships darting in and out of enemy formations with terrifying precision. While Exilvani captains shouted orders and struggled to reposition their fleets, the Terran vessels danced through the battlefield, striking with pinpoint accuracy. Empty space. And then, Just as quickly as they had arrived, the human fleet vanished. Engines flaring, they disappeared into the blackness of space, leaving behind nothing but burning wreckage and a silent, shattered station. The attack had lasted less than 15 minutes. Across the galaxy, the shockwaves of that single strike spread like wildfire. The council chambers erupted into chaos as news of the destruction reached them. Leaders of the great empire's beings who had ruled for centuries watched in stunned silence as footage of the battle played across their holographic displays. The Exilvani Dominion, once so confident in their superiority, now faced a humiliating truth. They had been caught off guard, overpowered, and outmatched by the very species they had laughed at. Admiral XL Tor, who had once mocked humanity in front of the council, now stood in silence, his golden eyes burning with fury and fear. His arrogance had cost them dearly. This cannot be," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the growing uproar. The other empires turned to him, waiting for an answer, a justification, anything that could explain how this had happened. But there was no explanation, no excuse that could erase what had just unfolded. The humans had made their move, and they had made it clear they were not to be ignored. On Earth, the response was different. In the control room of Terran High Command, Admiral Leon Carter watched the data feeds pouring in, his expression unreadable. Around him, officers cheered, their fists clenched in victory. But he remained still, his mind already moving beyond the battle. This was only the beginning. Humanity had struck first, but the war was far from over. The Council would not let this humiliation go unanswered. Retaliation was inevitable. The difference now was that humanity would be ready. They had been underestimated once. That mistake would never be made again. And somewhere, deep in the dark corners of the galaxy, the old powers trembled. The first strike had been made. The humans had arrived. And the war for the future had begun. The Galactic Council had never known fear. For centuries, they had ruled with absolute certainty, their authority unchallenged, their dominance unquestioned. Empires bent the knee, civilizations obeyed, and those who resisted were swiftly reminded of their place. The old powers, the so-called great species, had long considered themselves the unshakable rulers of the stars. And yet, in the span of a single Terran assault, that illusion had shattered. The images of burning Exilvani warships, the ruins of what was once an impenetrable fortress, and the sight of human warships disappearing without a trace at all played on repeat in the council chambers, a reminder of their failure to understand the true threat that had been growing right under their noses. The room, once filled with laughter at humanity's expense, was now suffocated by silence. The ambassadors of the great empire sat rigid in their seats, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright terror. The Exilvani representative, Admiral Tor, was no longer mocking or dismissive. His golden eyes burned with humiliation and rage, but beneath that, there was something else, something the council had never seen in him before. Doubt. "We cannot allow this to go unanswered," he growled, his voice breaking the uneasy quiet. This was not just an attack. It was a declaration of war. His claws dug into the table before him, his breathing heavy with suppressed fury. The humans struck first. They spilled blood. If we do not crush them now, they will only grow bolder. But instead of the immediate agreement he expected, there was hesitation. The Yuvani ambassador, a slender figure wrapped in violet ceremonial robes, exhaled slowly. "And what if we attack them and lose?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. The very idea of losing to humanity had once been absurd, but now, after witnessing their fleet in action, after seeing the Exilvani forces crumble in mere minutes, the possibility had become terrifyingly real. The silence stretched, and in that moment, the balance of power in the galaxy shifted. For the first time, the Council was afraid. Their discussions turned from arrogance to calculation. The humans had not fought like any species they had encountered before. They did not rely on sheer numbers or brute force, nor did they engage in long, drawn-out battles. They struck quickly, efficiently, and then disappeared before their enemies could react. Their weapons were unlike anything the Council had ever faced. Kinetic rounds moving faster than the speed of thought, missiles with guidance systems that evaded the most advanced countermeasures, ships that moved unpredictably and operated in ways that defied conventional warfare. The Ixalvani forces had prepared for a battle of strength. The humans had given them a demonstration of precision and ruthlessness instead. The Council's arrogance had been shattered, and now survival instinct took its place. "We must open communications," the Varnak diplomat finally said, his voice cautious. "We must reconsider our approach." It was the first time in living memory that the Galactic Council considered diplomacy with an upstart species, not from a position of strength, but out of necessity. The very idea was revolting to some of them, but as the council members looked at each other, the truth was undeniable. The humans had forced their hand. They had thought to intimidate the Terrans, to remind them of their place. Instead, they had learned the cost of underestimation. A message was sent to Earth. Not a demand, not an order, but a request. The first of its kind. The Galactic Council wished to negotiate. It was a moment that would be remembered for centuries. The day the Council's tone changed. The day they spoke to humanity not as rulers addressing a lesser species, but as equals facing an uncertain future.